I'll find peace and strength, leave the past behind me. Don't be alarmed, the dawn is almost here. I just want to sing sad songs till the break of dawn, with the guitar rolling me. Clear night sky, firelight, my eye, demon, let me be. But he don't know I'll never let go of the ones who set me free. I just want to sing sad songs till the church bells tone, and I'll leave this devil behind me. Whoa, behind me. Anyways, team, we're here with local Green Bay veteran Eric, and we're going to talk about a story of military service, but then also of hope and alternative therapies. I hope we get to alternative therapies.
Oh, we will.
Okay, so let's start off with the fact that you were in the Navy, correct?
Men's Department of the Navy.
The men's, the U.S. Marine Corps. Thanks for your service, as always. Why the hell did you join the Marines?
Well, my grandpa was in the Marines. My uncle was in the Marines. I just really looked up to them. They were just always so, had a lot of discipline, good bearing, and just really were, straightforward people. And I just really looked up to that. And after high school, I was just really undecided what to do. So just kind of started following their footsteps and hopefully find the path of whatever path I'm supposed to be on.
And now when you joined, there was a war going on.
Yes, I joined in 2008.
Yeah. See, I joined in the worst thing that could have happened was Bosnia in 99. So I didn't see a war coming. Okay, so talk us through, anything about the upbringing you want to discuss, or just go right to the nitty-gritty combat stuff?
Just grew up in a divided household. My mom and dad split custody. Both had different kind of ways of, raising me. And that was kind of where a lot of the uncertainty after high school came in. I just didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't have any, just a passion that I wanted to go full forward college into. So just out of a lot of, time thinking about it and uncertainty, I just decided to walk in the recruiter's office one day and say, hey, I want to join.
Yeah. I also from a divided home, and it's funny how many of our fellow veterans end up being. I was listening to something recently and talked about how people that choose to serve a lot of times got kind of a chip on their shoulder, and service is kind of a way to get past the chip on the shoulder. So yeah, that was me too.
And it wasn't divided anyway bad. Like both my parents loved me. I always had clothes. I always had food. I always had transportation, medical, whatever I needed. It wasn't anything like a bad divided household. It was great.
Okay. Let's skip to the Marine Corps. I heard it sucks going to Marine basics. So talk to me, Goose. You're in the Marines. What happens?
Well, I went December 2008. So.
And what was your AF? I'm sorry. They don't call them MOSs in the Marines. They call
it MOS.
Oh, it's an MOS. Okay. What was your MOS? What was your job in the Marines?
Well, I was infantry. I was a mortarman.
All right.
But through boot camp, so I went from December to February, and it was in San Diego, so it wasn't the worst weather. It fluctuated a lot, and that was the first times I was really around like that many people in a confined space in a different city. So I actually got incredibly sick in boot camp. Like I thought I was going to die. I was down to 118 pounds. I had bronchitis and pneumonia at the same time. Fought through it. I was on double rats for a long time. Ended up getting through all of that. And
they don't give you mental health days in the Marine Corps?
That's not when you're 18 years old. They don't see boot camp now.
No, we got mental health days. I'm not trying to brag. No, you shouldn't. We didn't miss lives.
So then I graduated, and it was actually terrible because I went through with my buddy Zach, who, we thought our whole time we were gonna go everywhere in the Marines together, have the same job, all this. His recruiter was like, basically promised him an infantry MOS, and long story short, he signed an open contract and he became a radio operator. So the day that we were sitting next to each other and we found out we weren't having the future we thought, was kind of devastating. But I went through my MOS school, and then I ended up being attached to 3rd Battalion, 7th Marines out in 29 Palms, California. Half of our infantry group went to Camp Pendleton, half went to 29 Palms. So,
okay.
Into 3-7, which is at the time, still is a very historic unit.
3-7?
Yep.
Is that First Marine? What's the patch?
Yep, First Marine Division.
First Marine Division. I served.
There's actually an incredible documentary that just came out earlier this year called The Gift. It was about Corporal Jason Dunham, who he was awarded the Medal of Honor. Jumped on a live grenade with his Kevlar and saved a few Marines around him. So it was really, really incredible.
So how much combat did you do? How many tours did you do?
I did 2 to Afghanistan. We deployed in March of 2010.
Okay.
About halfway through that deployment, we were in the Helmand province the whole time, but halfway through, the 40th Royal Marines were getting out of that area, so we went to Sangin and worked out with them. So we were there for a little over 3 months. Then 3rd Battalion, 5th Marines relieved us they were there for 6 months. Then they were relieved by 1-5. And then, lo and behold, October of 2011, we're back there again.
Jeez.
So less than a year, because we got out of there October of 2010 and we're back there October of 2011.
Same province though?
Same province, same city, same bases, same everything. So it's kind of a nice, like knowing what you're going into, especially being stationed in that desert area. It's like my entire training was desert warfare, and then my deployments were desert warfare. So it was like, we were ready for it. So it was,
okay.
I mean, it was kinetic. It was awesome. Thank God we were trained for it.
So are you patrols, door to door, village to village stuff?
First deployment, yes.
Okay.
Second deployment, I was more FTC chief in charge of the mortar. So I was.
Oh, so you were actually on base. I'm assuming your mortar positions.
Yeah, more FOBs and patrol bases.
Okay. Wow. I just
because that first one sucked, and I was like, if I could, not have as much combat, the second one, I'm gonna try that.
So, anything to share? Any funny stories from Afghanistan?
Oh, good God!
Hey, let's go back to it, man. Funny story. Let's just take a full do-over if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. So, funny story. At times you had to stand too, so you couldn't get out of your fighting holes depending on the time of day. I mean, we had some snipers with us, and so a lot of times in the morning you're just kind of waking up, telling stories, reading books, whatnot. And I think we had this book by Tucker Max. It was called I Hope They Serve Beer in Hell. I don't know if you've ever heard of that book. They made it into a movie, so it was just kind of funny. We're reading that, just everyone standing around there, and at times you can't go to the bathroom, so you obviously just go in like a water bottle, Gatorade bottle, whatever you have. Well, my buddy Ryan, he accidentally grabbed not his water bottle, and he unscrewed it, and right as it came up to his lips, I was just like, it's just slow motion, because it's like, no, and the look on his eyes was just pure. It was like slow motion, and we joke about that story all the time. But no, it's just because this was before, obviously, like cell phones and tablets and all that kind of stuff. So you're playing cards, you're just telling stories, you're just playing the weirdest games in your head, like name 7 Bruce Willis movies, or name 5 Mel Gibson movies. So you just name them.
That level of deployment, like camaraderie and friendship that you build, is impossible to emulate. In fact, that's like the stuff that keeps you sane, is talking and communicating and being with people. And I think one of the reasons that in redeployment we've had such a hard time as a force in general is, unlike in World War II, where they kept that camaraderie on the ship all the way home, they talked, everything's out of their system. They had months before they were redeployed. I don't know about you, but for us, it was hop on a plane, fly home, take off, go be a citizen with no time to deconflict everything.
No, and that's one of the hardest phases with anything in your life, is like integrating back into a different environment.
Yeah.
Like going from military gung-ho grunt to civilian, hard to get a job, struggling at school, like basic classes in college, and you're struggling, and it's a different world, really, because it's a mentality that you have for between 4 and 20, sometimes 30 plus years, and then here you are, civilian. Oh.
Chef. If you don't mind, that's a good segue. So I'd love to have you tell war stories, but you're a real veteran who doesn't like to tell war stories, and I respect that greatly. I think, but let's get home. So coming home, talk to us. And at this point, the purpose of this podcast is to give hope to people who are in rough spots. So I ask guests, as much as you're willing to do, talk to us. What is darkness? What happened?
Yeah. So when I got back, 2013, I ended up getting divorced. Then I went to school for a little bit, started working jobs here and there. Didn't really find anything I liked. My dad wanted me to help with his business, but that wasn't, it was more of a desk job and a computer job. And I'm just not that kind of person. So
Right.
I just kind of was on my own path for a little while, started bartending, and then just really, really started liking that. Like, started dressing up nice when I did it, bow tie, suspenders, and just kind of being like the happy-go-lucky Tom Cruise flair cocktail kind of bartender, and ended up having an opportunity to invest into a restaurant. I did. So I became part owner of Island Sushi in De Pere. And that was going great for a while. And one thing I'd like to touch on is like being in the Marines, especially infantry, knowing you're going to deploy, you're expected to see combat. You kind of know that you're going to be vulnerable to PTSD, to all these, severe anxiety, clinical depression, all these symptoms that come with combat and going overseas, whatnot. One thing I did not expect to find was, this is where my life kind of goes downhill. Easter morning, I came home in 2017, and my best friend unfortunately took his life. Very graphic scene. We don't have to go into it, but essentially calling his mother was the worst thing I ever had to do Easter morning. And it took hours for anybody to answer. My friends, my family, it was just.
This was Easter morning.
Easter morning. So that was 2017. And like up to that point, I was a good boy. I went to the VA, listened to doctors, Western medicine. Like that was my only outlet I had, because I mean, that's really all I knew growing up, especially in the military. It's like you listen to doctors, they know what's right for you. Soon after a suicide, unfortunately, I couldn't manage my employees anymore. I couldn't really live in my house. So I ended up selling my equity in the restaurant. I moved down to Illinois, and I ended up, that's where I really discovered like cannabis and CBD for the first time. Because when I went down there, it was very experimental, like leading up to that, just because I lived in.
Was it legal yet in Illinois at the time?
Yeah.
Medicinally or recreationally?
Medicinally.
Okay.
I think it might have been right around that time it did get recreational too. So
okay.
So just the opportunity that a friend opened his house to me, and then just having a fresh start was right in my alley. So then I got my medical card right away, and then I ended up finding a group of other veterans that were cannabis advocates, called Operation 1620. I'm actually wearing the hoodie and the hat. Just started as a Facebook group of veterans, and then it eventually became a nonprofit. They got their 501c3 classification. And the reason I'm getting into that is because with cannabis, it really helped open my eyes to other ways that veterans were healing, because I was not blinded, but I definitely had a stigma and a bias towards cannabis advocates.
So
cannabis users.
I want to go back to something that you kind of just mentioned briefly, but like myself, and I never try to totally disparage the VA system in general, because I know there's good people there that do good things. But I think even in this podcast, we've already discussed how the VA treats things sometimes. And at least in my experience, it was by sending more and more different pills that turns your eyes all sorts of colors. Funny story about that, but
we can't blame it, because they're bound by Western medicine and the doctrine that they read. So they have to follow this protocol, or else they'll get their license taken away. And that's like another step into like the next topic was, once I kind of like put that stigma and bias aside with cannabis, it kind of opened my eyes to like listen to other people and be like, well, people are finding success with microdosing mushrooms and mushrooms in general. And I wanted to really look into that. So after a few years of research, and then during COVID, my buddy and I just went out in nature. He was watching over me, and I ended up taking a heroic trip, which was over an eighth of an ounce, which is about 3.5 grams of mushrooms, which For people that have been under an experience like that, it is full visuals, tripping the hero dumps. But for me, knowing the environment I was in, I was safe. I was just able to experience it very, very relaxed, knowing breathing exercises going beforehand in case I would freak out a little bit, which I didn't. But for me, it was so beautiful and euphoric. I was crying tears of happiness because I just forgot happiness for so many years. Because I could never get that image out of my head. My best friend, he used to gun. I mean, it wasn't a pretty sight.
Yeah.
So me blaming myself for years, it just it was a very dark place. And then seeing that just brought such happiness to me. And anytime I was in a dark place, I can just think of that experience and smile, because it was just tears of happiness, just so much joy, because it was just beautiful. There was just pure beauty around me. Nothing else mattered at that time.
And Eric, for anybody listening who's like, oh, great, some drug guy, let me tell you, I want to interject here for a second, because something that I see a lot of, and I do a lot of suicide prevention in the veteran community a lot, and I've had a lot of conversations, and I've seen, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, I've seen a lot of people from our era of service who have been medicated almost into a bipolar / paranoid schizophrenic state almost. And that's through healthy Western medicine that has put these people to a point where they're almost non-functional. And the over-prescription of certain substances, which I think the VA is getting better at. So props, VA. You're doing a little bit better. But these people are truly messed up. And even myself, so I'm deep in the suicide prevention movement. So ketamine is something that in suicide prevention has been extremely successful. Special K by its street name, but ketamine has been a wonderful treatment. And so just to put in there, this is a truly alternative path that does save lives. It's not really up for debate. So for people who will critique cannabis in a veteran, if I had 100 veterans who were struggling with PTSD and I got to choose, all 100 of them would use cannabis and not alcohol. If I could ban anything from somebody who's dealing with serious PTSD, it's alcohol. That's got to go. Cannabis, on the other hand, completely opposite. And some of the initial studies, especially around the world, about what cannabis can do for those who suffer from PTSD or high anxieties, it's huge. So I just wanted to put that out there, that veterans suffer needlessly because they're deprived of basic potential healing for them. And I don't remember the name of the therapy in Mexico. Ibogaine. It seems to be like the magic bullet. Luttrell brother went down there and received Ibogaine treatment. Just fixed it.
I was actually part of a press conference with him on Capitol Hill in July regarding the FDA is voting to reschedule MDMA with assisted therapy from 1 to 3.
Oh,
it was really cool because there's this Politico article with him, and he's speaking, and it says that he went down to Mexico to receive psychedelic treatment. And it's funny because I'm in the background of that picture, and you can see me literally over his shoulder. It's one of the coolest things ever.
That's awesome.
This is Morgan Luttrell, and there's a few other people in there. But
Eric Jansen right there.
Right. Hey, actually, I'll show you it later too.
That's awesome.
Let you put it up there.
I will. It will be up there.
I'm actually glad you brought up the ketamine treatment, and you brought up the street name Special K.
Yeah.
Because with ketamine and the VA, it's not just you're given a drug and going home. This is ketamine assisted therapy. And that's a big part of a lot of these treatments is the assisted therapy part. Because with ketamine assisted therapy, it's 3 different sessions over 3 weeks. And before that, you kind of obviously you have a mentality going into it. You know what it's going to be, because with the assisted therapy, you have somebody administrating the medicine and somebody watching over you and making sure, like a trip sitter is the best name for it. So that is where...
And this is actively taking place in the VA right now.
In the VA.
Is this in study or in full practice?
Full practice.
Okay.
Full practice right now. And a lot of times you're given an eye mask and a headset. So it's kind of like a sensory deprivation thing while you're under the influence. That's why it's so therapeutical, because there's no distractions around you and it's all inside. And that's where a lot of these therapies are really working, because it's internalizing a lot of these issues rather than having to deal with them with so much output. It's really just your input and that's it. So that's why with MDMA assisted therapy, ayahuasca assisted therapy, ibogaine, MDMA assisted therapy, it's all done with professionals that administrate the medicine and people that know what to look for when you're under the influence. Because if you don't have somebody watching over you when you're under the influence, that's where you can have a bad trip, you can freak out, you can have a bad time using medicine that you might not understand. That's why there needs to be so much research done in this country to get everything rescheduled, because our scheduling process is such a pain. And it's number one, it's unacceptable that a lot of veterans have to even leave the country to find healing, because we cannot heal in this country. Or if we can, it has to be on native land or religion exemptions or just like grounds like that, which is great. We can heal like that, but it needs to be scheduled in a way where it can be offered to veterans and their families through healthcare, health insurance, which is why we have such a passion to attempt to get a lot of these Schedule 1 drugs Scheduled 3 with assisted therapy, because we don't want just like people to be given mushrooms, to be given all this stuff and going home. No, it's the sessions, it's the therapy, it's the integration, it's a whole phase. It's not just a pill to mask it. This is boom, 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 integrate back, like actually changing your life, your community, your family for the better. And it's not just a pill to mask it to, here, take this for this problem. Oh, anxiety, depression, can't sleep, bipolar, or this. And pretty soon it's like your brain is jumbled because of the neurochemistry that is just all messed up in your head. Well, you just can't think properly. It's like your neural pathways are just blocked, or they're formed in bad ways.
And we're not medical professionals. I think I have to put that out here, whatever. But I will tell you that there's a substance that I got in the VA called prazosin, which really is nothing more than like a blood pressure drug. I was really struggling to sleep. I was working shift work at a sheriff's office at the time, so the not sleeping thing was not working because it was making me unsafe. You know what I'm saying? And so I ended up getting on this drug, prazosin. They gave me a pretty high dose. And the doctor was like, tell you what, if 1 doesn't work, do 2. If 2 isn't work, just take 3. And I took 3 one night, and I woke up at one point. I almost passed out. I could have died from low blood pressure on the floor there. But then the next day when I go into work, my eyes are beet red, like stark red. And I work for a sheriff's office. I come into a sheriff's office and everybody's looking at me like, did you come to work high? And no, I wasn't high. My blood pressure was dangerously low. And obviously something was giving me some crazy reaction, but it was healthy and it was prescribed and it was scheduled. It was just a prescription schedule. So yeah. And that drug was given to me just carte blanche. I took it home and took as many as I wanted because I was told to just load up. It'll be fine.
And what's really wild about, not wild, but like what's awesome about a lot of these organizations that, will allow people from other countries to Peru, go to Mexico, go to anything for these indigenous ceremonies, they're very strict on what you actually have in your body, even like 2 or 3 months out. But a lot of places, if you have an active SSRI, you have to be off of that for at least 60 days, like clean 60 days, not that you start weaning off. It's completely off because of the reaction that, like, specifically ayahuasca can have with Western medicine. That's why you need to be very clean, very everything before. Like, for me, one of the hardest things to give up was the caffeine for 2 weeks prior.
Not even caffeine.
No caffeine. It was very like no sugars, no even, it's going to sound weird, but like pleasure with your partner, just abstaining from that was difficult because you're really going there to attempt to change. Like for me, it was to stop blaming myself and be able to move forward from my best friend's death. And that was a hard thing for me. That was my big thing. And I was shown a lot along the way that I came I came back a different person, and I just have such a different outlook on life and different passion.
And how often do you have to redo that therapy?
I have, so I did my ayahuasca ceremonies in October of 2022.
Okay.
And I've not done a psychedelic trip since. I've not done mushrooms. I've not done more ayahuasca. No ibogaine, ketamine, MDMA, nothing.
And that's part of why I wanted to have you on this podcast. This isn't saying this is the only way or is the best or right way or whatnot, but for our veteran community out there, man, got to have options. A lot of veterans truly quit. They hit those rough spots. And the problem with being a combat veteran, and I'll just say this very frankly, is it comes back at the weirdest times. Like me, I'm in my 10-year reunion for my first tour. My first tour was a lot like your first tour. My first tour was pretty chippy. So I get there. I'm doing very well in life. At the time, I was the chief deputy of the sheriff's office. I got kids. I'm successful. And I show up, and my whole unit's there, and I love seeing people. But a few of them have some serious mental health stuff going on, like very obvious, like, schizophrenic level. And it's so common with folks with PTSD, undertreated, underdiagnosed. There's a lot of people heavily abusing a lot of stuff. And as I sat there and do my best to just love my brothers and sisters, it started to hit me. And next thing I'm dealing with this like soul-wrenching survivor's guilt. And it's not survivor's guilt of surviving combat. It's survivor's guilt of surviving life after.
Yeah.
And there it all came back. And there's been other times, 3 years ago, I was working a regular job down the road, and during the day I started to have like what I thought was like a heart attack. I was like, having like a heart attack, and I was doing very well at the time. I was a sergeant major at that time, and started having to sit down during the day because I just like need to take a minute. And so I went to the VA, got all looked at and everything, and finally they're like, yeah, you're having some panic attacks, man. Like, panic attacks, that's not very tough. And what happened, Lord knows what triggered it, but it just came all back. And one thing I've read about these alternative therapies, which as a security clearance holder, I'm not eligible to even attempt, is that it lasts. It really does get to the point where it takes that stuff away. And I think some of it's because you confront yourself, right? Like, can you talk about that journey? I hate to get deep, but I really love hearing this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm not the only veteran that's done this.
No,
you've heard of.
The thing is,
that's why it's amazing. But it's like, how often do you know somebody local to Green Bay, Wisconsin?
Yeah,
alone part of your VFW that's done this.
By the way, you are an outstanding contributor to our VFW.
Thanks.
Say that, yeah. Anyway, all right, man. What do you say a story about finding yourself? Tell us about the experience, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so I believe it was around June 2022. I was listening to a podcast. Aaron Rodgers had just won Aubrey Marcus's podcast, and they were discussing his ayahuasca experience. It was his first time going public with it, which I'm sure right now he regrets doing with the backlash he's received.
He got chewed up.
Oh my God, he did. And I'm going to make a good comparison about that later.
Okay.
But so I'm listening to that podcast. I get this number from area code I don't recognize. And usually I'm like, it's spam, but I was like, okay, I'm just going to answer. So hello, this is Eric. And it was the president of Heroic Hearts Project, which is a nonprofit, and they help facilitate trips for veterans and first responders to leave the country and do these psychedelic therapies. Are they a U.S.-based nonprofit that runs this? Okay. They are.
Okay. What's the name again?
It's Heroic Hearts Project.
Heroic
Hearts Project.
Okay.
And they actually just had a great 60 minutes documentary, or a little clip about 15 minutes long with Anderson Cooper. And they actually went to the exact same place that I did my ayahuasca ceremony. They were doing psilocybin, which is magic mushrooms. They were doing it there. So it was kind of cool that they shed light on that. And it was neat because the reason I got the call was because the spot opened up 4 months later in October. The reason that spot opened up was one of the veterans he didn't want to be part of the documentary. That we had a documentary team with us. So he didn't want to. So they called me asking if I wanted to do it. So I was like, I have no problem being on camera. Sure, why not? But they were like, well, usually it's about a 6 to 8 month, window that we get people ready. Are you able to do it in this time frame? Like, what active medicines are you taking? Like, I'm not prescribed anything. I use cannabis. They're like, you don't take anything over the counter? I'm like, nope. Like, I don't even touch ibuprofen or Tylenol. I've seen what these do to people, and I just can't do that to myself. And I say that living in Wisconsin, but I'm drinking alcohol, which is not right now. I have been sober for a good amount of time right now, so I'm pretty proud of that.
I think we've talked about that on this show before too. Wisconsin and alcohol are a whole other thing. If you've never lived in Wisconsin, it's real here. So
yeah. So in my first night of ceremony, so I was in Mexico for a week, didn't have my phone, and that contained 3 nights of drinking ayahuasca, which is about a 6 hour quote unquote trip. So the reason ayahuasca is so, I wouldn't say much misunderstood, but the weird thing with ayahuasca is the active ingredient is DMT. It's basically a DMT drink that becomes orally ingestible when it's mixed with one plant in the world. And that plant is the ayahuasca vine. It contains what's called a monoamino oxidase inhibitor, and it allows DMT to bypass your liver and go into your bloodstream. Normal DMT has to be smoked. I've never done that. That's just something that never appealed to me. But doing it this way in the religious ceremonies and just hearing people like Aaron Rodgers and Alvin Marcus having success with it, getting over their traumas with whatever that is, just appealed to me. So my first night under the influence, I essentially had this really weird heart to heart with the Orion constellation because I could barely see. I had a canopy above me and the mountains in Mexico right there, and I could see the constellation. So I was like drawn to it, wondering what it means. And I took it as it's the warrior spirit watching over me. I no longer need to fight. I don't need to, pick these battles that I don't need to anymore. Why am I always looking for a fight? I don't need to. And then I just had this crazy Doctor Strange kind of like surrender yourself to like everything and just realizing how small I am and that like I'm the architect of my own creation, thought shaped reality type deal. And it was like, I've heard that before, but it was like truly believing it and just knowing that like, I really do have like the power to control my own happiness. Like it's weird at the end of the day, like the factors that affect me in the real world are ultimately my doing. So it was just kind of like a having like self-responsibility type learning mentality and the first couple nights. And then I could probably go into this for about an hour, but the biggest thing was my last night was essentially how much I wanted to thank my mother for my life and apologize for all the times that I hurt her, whether I knew it or not, as a kid talking back or say, I hate you, all this, I never meant it. It just always was something I never knew I was holding on to, but I cried so much that last night, and thank God the main facilitator, her name was Dr. Andrea. She knew exactly what I was going through, and she was there to hug me, all of this, and it was so magical. And like, ever since coming back from that, my relationship has never been better.
So I'm hearing the fruits of your experience was one, like finding gratitude for something that maybe you weren't as grateful as you could have been for. And then number 2 is getting self-control and like getting your agency back, getting your own control back, which probably the most frustrating thing I deal with when I talk to somebody who's thinking about committing suicide, contemplating committing suicide, is they don't have hope and they don't believe that they can generate hope. They're kind of in a spot where they don't believe that they can. And there's a self-realization that, I don't care what anybody in the mental health field says. I strongly believe that often we over-victimize victims of mental health conditions and we don't help them be a part of real healing. We just kind of linger on symptoms forever, and we don't say like, hey, now what are you going to do to take this step away from it? And it sounds like the entire process that I went through, like 15 years of school, like to learn about, you figured out in one night. like you were able to self-actualize in one night. That's amazing.
And one thing that a lot of people will tell you with any psychedelic journey is one of the hardest things afterwards is the integration phase. It's taking all that you learned, that you felt, you saw, and bringing it back to the real world, because you're literally one person in another country having this internal experience that nobody else could possibly understand. And then you bring that back and people are looking at you like, oh God, like, what are you talking about? Like, it was really hard with my family right away. Just being most of them very, not even ever using cannabis by the book, Christians, that kind of stuff. So
yeah,
they think I'm down this bad path because they heard through the grapevine that Eric's using psychedelics, he's using drugs, all of this. And it's like, well, define what you want as a drug. Yeah, I mean, in your term, yes, but I mean, in Western medicine terms, I don't take pharmaceuticals. I mean, that's a drug to me. And I go to this country and like, this is indigenous healings that have been around for thousands of years. This isn't anything new. Mushrooms aren't anything new. Blue lotus isn't anything new. Ayahuasca isn't anything new. Like, these remedies have been here for way before any doctrine's ever been created.
And beyond giving yourself like freedom from what was holding you back, what's been the negative side effect afterwards? I mean, because you could say having to deal with society after the fact was a bit of a negative for you, and having the judgment on you, which I would recommend everybody think twice. When a person actually finds healing, it should be celebrated, especially if the outcome is positive. That should be celebrated. And if there's a means that got a person there, there's probably something to it. Yeah. So,
for me, one of the negative side effects would be like the loneliness and dealing with the frustration of kind of realizing that people won't fully understand everything, and you kind of have to break it down in a way that they will. And this is where I like bringing up Aaron Rodgers before, because me growing up in Green Bay, living in Green Bay, even after military, after everything, I can walk around, do what I want, go to grocery stores, go to Barnes and Noble. No one bombards me for pictures or autographs or talking behind my back.
Oh, they will after this.
I mean, let's be honest. But I mean, nobody's going to be talking about me on ESPN or CNN about my statuses, stuff like that. But so what does that do to somebody's mentality for 20 plus years of being in the spotlight, and your life is constantly critiqued, constantly ridiculed, constantly monitored? Like, just today or yesterday, there's pictures of him contemplating his future on a beach, and people are just taking pictures of it, posting it. Just let him be. So like, I can't blame someone like that for going through that kind of mental torture and just want to be better, because he doesn't understand what a veteran is going through with PTSD or, combat related situations. But then you have somebody like me that's not even like trying to move forward from that. It's from a personal issue that a lot of people don't even know why I left Green Bay in the first place. They don't know why I sold my equity in the restaurant. It's not something I ever posted. That was like, well,
and we shouldn't judge people's, like, I always tell when I teach suicide prevention, if somebody is crying because they lost somebody very important to them, and you find out that it was like a next door neighbor.
This comparison of traumas just needs to stop.
Because I played a little football. I played 1 year in the indoor professional football league. That was my swan song. And it hurts really bad. I can't imagine doing that for 20 years, dude. Just to build up of the physical trauma. And you can't tell me there's not mental trauma involved. Like, there's no way the human mind can sit in a pocket like Aaron Rodgers does, see a 350-pound person flying at him, and not have some moment where the brain is like, run.
And then you think you're safe at home after a game, and then you have your brother on The Bachelorette talking about your family issues. Or you got everybody talking about him and Danica Patrick or Olivia, whoever he's dating at the time, or that he's leaving the country and doing this. It's like, dude, just let this human be.
Yeah.
Leave him alone. Well, let's sound like that.
Leave Brittany alone. Leave Brittany alone. Oh, that was a good video.
Well, but no, it's just you mean that's like just an attack on somebody for what reason? Just because some analyst or some sports announcer wants to make themselves feel better for degrading somebody? Like, you think you're better than Aaron Rodgers because you haven't used alternative medicine? Okay, great.
Yeah,
Think that. Keep thinking that. Go on with your life. Make fun of somebody. Like, that's the problem right there, is this poking fun and judging people for what they do on their spare time or in their own mentality or their own household. Like, is he hurting anybody by doing this? No.
Yeah, which brings it back to that's what people that are getting healing and it's positive and the outcome is good should be celebrated. It should be a simple thing to say, wow, I'm so glad that, Bob isn't drinking himself to death every night now. What a huge win. I know a veteran. I'm not naming the veteran because I didn't ask to do so, but who did ayahuasca ayahuasca as well, and had the exact same outcome, and was a violent, over the top alcoholic, was going nowhere in life, was getting arrested nonstop. Now he's doing great. He's doing fine. And when I saw that transformation, I'll be honest, and it was before I even met you. That was the first time I was ever exposed to this. Like, whoa, this is really a thing. Like, I heard rumors, cannabis. I'm not an anti-cannabis person because I grew up in Portland, Oregon, and we didn't drink. Like, it was different culture. But the stigma around it doesn't match my experience. I walked out 17, didn't touch it again, served 24 years in the Army, perfectly fine. Didn't touch it, didn't need it. It didn't squash my ambition. Finished up as a daggone sergeant major. Like, you can't have much more ambition than that. So to look at me and be like, oh man, you're a lazy stoner because of who I was when I was 17 years old. It worked out pretty good for me.
Right.
No, so the judgment, again, and Lord knows what trauma from my own childhood, I was probably self-medicating, and it was probably a lot healthier than other ways that I could have self-medicated that trauma. So no judgment here, especially when the outcome's positive.
Yeah.
See, what the heck was I going to go next? Oh, would you talk about your organization, if you don't mind?
Yeah, absolutely. So
hopefully we've made the case that it's at least worth looking into alternative therapies. And it's not just for veterans. Oh, I'm going to cut you off 2 more seconds here. Law enforcement. I was in law enforcement for a long time. I worked with really good people, a lot of really good cops out there. Some cops out there are so trauma exposed, though, they get almost anti-humanity. There's the truth. Like, there are people out there who have been exposed to so much negative and just don't have the chance to refresh. And another thing I've heard is first responders are taking advantage of these exact same therapies and seeing the exact same successes. If you can reconnect with humanity after 20 years of dealing with the worst of the worst of the worst, that's worth like $1 million. And if it's possible, it should be supported. Anyways, keep going. Tell us about your organization.
Yeah, so like I said, when I moved down to Illinois, I got involved with a group called Operation 1620, which military time is 420. Kind of funny. And ended up meeting another organization, nonprofit called Balanced Veterans. And we had the same kind of idea and mentality, and we just kind of combined the 2 nonprofits to create Balanced Veterans Network.
Balanced Veterans Network.
BVN for short. Website, www.bvn.vet, like veteran, easy to remember. And we are a 501c3 nonprofit, and our mission is to educate, advocate, and support veterans' access to alternative therapies along with their families. And that is in any and all ways that you find balance, we like talking about. Like you and I love finding balance going rucking. Hey, fast paced, let's do it. Even we did that 5K.
Was it like negative 20?
Oh God, that was so cool. I don't know why we did that, but that was fun.
I couldn't feel money.
that was definitely a regret right away. But no, we created a community for veterans and their families just to come together and talk about how you find balance, because it can be going to the gym, doing breath work, meditation, spirituality. We got in the topic of cannabis. A lot of veterans are obviously using the heavier types of alternative medicine, leaving the country, going to native lands. But it's just having these resources and partnerships that, like, I have veterans reach out to me all the time, and I send them resources for them to apply for these places. And some of them have gone. Some of them have come back just with, I love hearing the stories. It's it's amazing because like I just not many people are going to be as open about it as me because of their jobs, because of their they don't want to be ridiculed, because I get it.
Yeah.
But one thing for me, talking about it has helped a lot. And just having these, I don't want to say platforms, but having any opportunity I can. Like this year in Washington, D.C. is going to be my 5th year, and our 5th year, I should say. But every year in Washington, D.C. at the National Cannabis Festival.
Dude, since I first met you, this has just gone like insane. I mean, you're doing bigger and bigger every year. I mean,
yeah. So at the National Cannabis Festival, we have a 40 by 40 tent, a veterans lounge for veterans to come in and just escape the crowd, smoke and joke, because it's legal to smoke cannabis in Washington, D.C., believe it. But then in Wisconsin, it's illegal.
I travel to Washington, D.C. a lot. It's very obvious that it's...
So this will be our 5th year having that area, and it's just it's great every year. We have 200 free tickets to give away to veterans. It's such a great networking event for just getting people involved with the community. And the perfect situation with that is last year before the event, we were able to go on Capitol Hill and talk to congressmen and senators. Then we did that again in July. And then next month, I'll be back on Capitol Hill. This year, I'm actually leading everything, getting everybody there, the B&Bs, the meeting set up,
Awesome.
all that. I got our team together. And the best thing about it is 4 of them already do have Capitol Hill experience. So if we do have meetings at the same time in different offices, we can facilitate that. And we're just going to be telling our stories because last year, General Bergman from the Upper Peninsula, he's their first district representative.
3-star retired, right?
3-star Marine Corps general, took our coalition's letter and forwarded it to his colleagues and got 60 signatures back. And that was in regards to the MDMA with assisted therapy rescheduling that the FDA voted on last year.
Outstanding.
And then Senator Bennett from Colorado did the same thing with his Senate colleagues and only got 19 signatures back, but that's 79 signatures we didn't have in the beginning of the year.
Oh, and I want to cut in on for whichever 50% of you feels alienated by this conversation because you think politically we're on the other side here. I want to point out that this is an extremely apolitical issue, and there are people from both sides who are avid supporters of alternative therapies. And if I'm not mistaken, that spans from like Bernie Sanders to Governor Rick Scott. Right, Rick Scott, right, from Texas. Did I get his name right? Or is it Rick Perry?
Rick Perry.
Rick Perry.
Rick Scott is senator from Florida.
Yeah, my bad. But yes, Governor Perry, though, who was like a hardcore conservative from back in the day, is a huge supporter of alternative medical therapies.
Yeah, this is a bipartisan issue. I mean, you have people on both sides. I mean, I'm glad that people like Morgan Luttrell, Dan Crenshaw, General Bergman are putting their neck as veteran influencers in Congress to put their neck out that they are for this therapy too, because, and this is public, they have left the country. Oh, Morgan Luttrell and I know Dakota Meyer, they've both left the country to heal from their traumas as well. And it's frankly unacceptable that veterans have to leave the country to heal.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of our message. We're really trying to do everything we can to get any breakthrough therapy voted on to be rescheduled. And that starts with the Breakthrough Therapies Act of 2022 that Dr. Paul and Cory Booker have waiting, that essentially has no movement. And that's gonna, what the Breakthrough Therapies Act will do is whenever the FDA designates something as a breakthrough therapy, it will get expedited treatment.
Right.
With MDMA, it received its breakthrough therapy designation in 2017, and it took 7 years to be voted on, which is 7 years of how many veterans a day between 22 and 44. We don't need to go over the numbers, but this therapy works. If it was just a pill, MDMA would be instantly legal, because the phase 3 study that the Lycos group did, 86.5% of participants no longer qualified for PTSD or had lower qualifications for PTSD. 71.2 no longer even had a designation. So if it was a pill by itself, automatic approval. But it's the assisted therapy part that they're having a hard time.
Can I roll deep into conspiracy with you here? okay, I'm going to go deep, but I'll tell you that hypothetically, if my job was to make money off of therapies, I can probably make more money with repetitive therapy that is forever therapy because my paycheck is guaranteed. I can absolutely see where it's not a good business model to cure somebody.
Oh, it's terrible.
If it's all about business, getting a veteran square with a one-time experience, bad business. So I know you're working against that. That conspiracy's got to be a part of this. I mean,
I would rather be mentally healthy than physically wealthy. That's actually, I just thought it like right now. That's a French go on.
I like
that.
I think that's going to be the tagline for this episode. I say it again so I don't forget. I'd rather be
mentally healthy than physically wealthy.
That's what I'm talking about. Yes. And so that, I'm assuming, is a big piece of what you're fighting against is, let's be honest, established drug companies out there. They're probably a big piece of, and then you have to figure,
because I mean, like if someone's having an anxiety attack or a panic attack, and even a lot of people prescribe Xanax that they can just take and calm themselves down. Well, instead of that, and breathing exercises or ways to calm yourself down, little step aside, take some breaths, meditate a little bit, and you're fine. And it's like almost, obviously it's better to take a pill like that, but it's the same types of just retraining your brain and your habits and your daily life to incorporate how that's like, see the end goal and get there. Don't just see the end and be like, oh, that's way too far, I give up. Like, take baby steps, get there.
I don't remember what motivated me to do it, but after I got out of service, I kind of fell off for a bit because I didn't have to be up early. But I was reading some book or listening to some, and it was just like, hey man, you really want to be healthy, get yourself up intentionally out of bed at a certain time, do it religiously, especially during the weekdays, and get your PT in first. And when I really started doing that again, which I've become very religious about, if I have a day that I miss my PT, the whole day feels off. When I get out and it's uncomfortable and I take control of myself in the morning, I own myself the whole rest of every single day.
Right.
And that's free, baby. I don't have to pay anything for that. All I got to do is get my freaking butt out of bed at 5, and it sucks most days. Yeah. But having this
5? Oh, man.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's because of my schedule. I got to do 5. Otherwise, it'd be like 10. But no, those little things are free. They don't cost anything, and they're very therapeutic, and they're certainly healthier for you, like you said. And I'm not disparaging anybody who takes pills, but I'm just saying it's much healthier to go for a run than it is to take a pill. And yeah, I can kind of leave that there. So with that said, the reason I wanted to do this, so April's my birthday month, and we average about 1,000 views across the platforms of this podcast. So I'd like to challenge everybody an April challenge, and I'm going to put it up on my stuff. You're going to put it up on your stuff too. We're going to put a Balanced Veterans Network challenge out. It's going to be a fundraising mission. We did this, was that 2 years ago? We did something for Stop Soldier Suicide. It does some interesting research into the back end of suicide, but raised a good chunk of change. So the challenge, and I'd like everybody to join us with on this, is 70 miles rucked. You pick your weight, just don't cheat yourself. Put some weight in there. 70 miles rucking in the month of April. And where are you going to be throughout the month of April? Because you're going to be rucking in little places.
Well, I think beginning of April, I'll be flying to Philadelphia, driving to Toronto. So I'll be rucking all through there.
Outstanding.
April 5th, I'll be in Ann Arbor, I believe. We have a Grow Fest out there, an official, kind of cannabis-related event that BBN is going to be tabling. And then, let's see, Rockford, Illinois, around the 420 time frame. I'll be up here for the draft, which is going to be great. And then the day after the draft, I fly into Washington, D.C., because we have a National Cannabis Festival Summit Monday the 27th. Monday the 28th.
Okay.
And then April 29th, 30th, and May 1st, we'll be advocating on Capitol Hill. So congressmen and senators.
We won't be finishing it out here by rocking down to the monument this time.
No, because on May 2nd, one of my closest friends, Andrew, is getting married. and he's a gunnery sergeant in the Marines, one of my closest friends.
Outstanding.
Yeah, so he's getting married at the Marine Corps Museum
Oh,
in
cool.
Virginia. Yeah.
Outstanding.
Yep. So that's going to be great. And one of the great things is his fiance is actually in the age for Senator Scott in Florida. So yeah, and Senator Holly.
Well, I will speak on behalf of myself and say I'm going to beat 70 miles because that's what I do. I'm going to put the challenge out on all the social medias. It's going to be, what do you want to do? Hashtag BVN.
Yeah.
Simple as that.
Hashtag BVN.
Hashtag BVN. I'll share the fundraising link from you. And let's see what we can do for advocacy for folks to have additional options to cure a lot of times what are perpetual conditions that, you know, if there's a chance at a cure, take a chance, man. Take a shot at a cure because a forever diagnosis sucks.
Yeah.
So let's help people fight a forever diagnosis. Hashtag BVN, 70 miles in April. Don't be a wuss. Post pictures and videos of all the suck, okay? Because in April, there's all sorts of rain and suck here, and it's probably still cold every morning, and you're going to be in all sorts of weird places.
Yeah.
Are you going to be posting pictures and making it happen?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, good. So we're going to do it. I'm not going to set a fundraising goal yet, but I think it's going to be high. I think I'm going to say 3K is what I'd like to see us do. So no, I just said it. There it is. That's 3K. We can do 3K in April and support the cause, man. And thanks for what you do for veterans, first responders, and everybody with BVN. And yeah, keep fighting the good fight, dude.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate you very much.
Yes,
Thanks for being here, man. All right. We'll update you as well with how the fundraiser turns out. All right, team. Have a good one. Eric, thanks again for your time, brother.
That's it.
Be safe.
Behind me. I just want to sing sad songs till the church bells tone and I leave this devil behind.